Welcome back to our lecture on the period of 1923 to 1929 in Weimar Germany. And this part of the lecture, we're going to look at what happened following the Munich Putsch and how Hitler and the Nazis changed their approach in terms of their tactics, and then we're going to find out whether or not it worked. Now, this is a tricky period. A lot of people find this quite difficult to remember because there's a few key details. Some of them seem really obvious and really good to sort of go-to evidence. Some of them, including the first one that we're going to look at, are easily forgotten. So you need to be very careful with this and revise it over and over so you remember exactly why it's relevant. So, we just looked at the end of the last part. We looked at how Hitler had realised that trying to take power by force was not going to work. So he had to reorganise the party, the Nazi party, to make sure that it would be successful in elections and successful in attracting democratic support. So Hitler starts this by calling something called the Bamberg Conference. Bamberg Conference. And this was a conference where he put down threats to his leadership that came from Gregor Strasser and Joseph Goebbels. Now, these people were from the left wing of the Nazi Party. Remember, a Nazi Party is National Socialist German Workers' Party. So there was some element to it which was a bit more left wing than Hitler was. That means it was more about kind of like helping the worker and so on, not so much about the anti-Semitism, the aggressive fascism and the dictatorship and so on. So this was starting to gain a bit of traction, this viewpoint, and it was led by a man called Gregor Strasser, but supported by Joseph Goebbels. Hitler could not have this. He needed the party to reflect his own personal views, as he'd spelled out in Mein Kampf. And also he wanted to be an undisputed leader of this party. Hitler, as we know, loves power, so he needed to make sure that nobody was a threat to him. So he sidelined Strasser. He didn't kill him at this point, that comes later, but he got rid of him. He made him not so much of an issue, puts him in a job that means he's not that relevant, and was not going to undermine him. In terms of Goebbels, Hitler noticed a talent there. Hitler noticed that Goebbels could actually be really helpful to him. That talent was his ability to speak and his ability with propaganda. So he uses him as his key ally to support him in running the Nazi party. So in sidelining Strasser and getting Goebbels on his side, Hitler used the Bamberg Conference to ensure that he was the clear leader of the Nazi party. Also was the SA. The SA needed to be changed because a lot of people in Germany were fearful of the SA. These were the brown shirts. A lot of people in Germany following the Munich Putsch thought they were thugs, thought that they were dangerous, thought that they were kind of a threat to civil society, to democracy and all the rest of it. So Hitler had to try and change the SA to, whilst keeping their kind of sort of slightly intimidating nature and allowing them to fight communists when needed, he wanted them to be disciplined. So he strengthened them. He got more young men to join, but emphasised discipline and order rather than violence and intimidation. That means making their uniforms smarter, making them more kind of ordered at rallies and so on and so forth. Trying to make them a bit more respectable so people wanted to vote for Hitler because the SA would probably support them in what they wanted in their lives rather than undermine what they wanted in their lives. The Nazi Party in its early years was also a little bit sort of disorganised. So Hitler did quite a few things to help with the organisation. Firstly, he came up with something called evening classes. And these were literally just lessons that were used to train members in public speaking. You know, we all know that Hitler was a great public speaker, as was Goebbels, but he had to make sure that it wasn't just him going around the country speaking to everybody, that other people in local Nazi parties could speak with such eloquence and fluency that he could. So this was very useful and helped to encourage a lot more people to join the party. Another thing that helped increase membership was groups such as the Nazi Students' League, Nazi Teachers' League, and Nazis Women's League. And other youth movements were starting to appeal to the young, early Hitler Youth movements. The first Nazi rallies were held in this period. These became a key part of Nazi propaganda. And we'll have a look at a picture of that in a minute. And finally, Hitler reorganised the party to make it more efficient, but also to make it more easily controlled by him. And this was called the Gauss system. These were branches of the party set up all over the country, and he called them Gauss. And each one was led by a Gauss leader, or Gaussleader, in German, Gauss leader, who would be directly, who would respond directly to Hitler. This meant that Hitler was able to control finance and membership from Munich, giving him more power. So there's your picture of an early Nazi rally. You can see it's not like the Nuremberg rallies, which you may have been used to seeing later in the period, with these huge, enormous rallies with hundreds of thousands of people. They'd be small rallies, but you can see in the essay there, they're ordered, they're disciplined, and they are saluting Hitler. So they are clearly following him. So by the time of the rally that's in this picture, it's clear that his changes were working. Disciplined essay, Hitler as the undisputed leader of the Nazi party, and a kind of ordered look and a kind of ordered way of seeing the Nazis for the people around them. Finally, in this section, as I've just mentioned earlier, Hitler got time in prison to write Mein Kampf, but during the period of 1923 to 29, he began to distribute his book widely, make sure that people were clear of his ideas, which might have strengthened some people's views on what the Nazis were all about. So was it successful? Well, this is an easy question to answer in a yes or no format. Okay, so a question they could ask you in an exam, for example, would be, by 1928, to what extent had Hitler's changes to the Nazi party worked? So in some respects, he had got some early supporters. People like ex-soldiers who might have wanted to join the SA, but also other ex-soldiers who weren't joining the SA, but really liked Hitler's kind of like strength in his opposition to the Treaty of Versailles and his promise that he was going to ignore it when he came to power. Other people who supported him were middle-class groups such as master craftsmen, clerks and merchants. These were people who will have lost out with hyperinflation and also would have feared communism. Another group that really feared communism were farmers. They were desperately affected by dropping food prices in the 1920s, and they thought that Hitler was kind of their last hope. They didn't like the Weimar government, and a lot of the positives that we're going to talk about from Stresemann didn't really relate to the farmers. They were more beneficial to the people in the cities. And skilled workers were also fairly likely to vote for the Nazi party. And there is evidence that these people were starting to really like Nazism. Their membership of the party grew to 100,000 by 1928, so it's double what it was during the time of the Munich Putsch. So it shows that those people that liked the Nazis really liked the Nazis. They liked them enough to pay to be fully paid up members. However, this success was not translated into success at elections. And one of the most important statistics in this whole course to remember, because it's relevant for this question, but also your later question on why people vote for the Nazis, is that in 1928, the Nazis only won 12 seats. So the 1928 election, they only won 12 out of more than 600 seats in the Reichstag. This is a very small percentage of seats, meaning a very small percentage of the country was actually voting for them. Not that many more people were voting for them than were actually members. So this suggests that in terms of electoral success, Hitler's changes in the short term, or at least by 1928, hadn't worked. Whether or not they worked by 1932, and whether they were the real reason, part of the reason why he was so successful in those elections in 1932, will be a debate for a different lecture.